The Alawites, also known as Alawis, are a prominent mystical religious group, centered in Syria, who follow a branch of the Twelver school of Shia Islam but with syncretistic elements. Alawites revere Ali, and the name Alawi means followers of Ali. The sect is believed to have been founded by Ibn Nusayr during the 9th century. For this reason, Alawites are sometimes called Nusayri, though this term has come to have derogatory connotations in the modern era. Another name, Ansari, is believed to be a mistransliteration of Nuṣayrī. Today, Alawites represent 12% of the Syrian population and are a significant minority in Turkey and northern Lebanon. There is also a population living in the village of Ghajar in the occupied Golan Heights. They are often confused with the Alawis of Turkey, another Shia sect. Alawites form the dominant religious group on the Syrian coast and towns near the coast, which are also inhabited by Sunnis, Christians, and Ismailis. Alawites have historically kept their beliefs secret from outsiders and non-initiated Alawites, so rumors about them have arisen. Alawites and Shiites in general were historically persecuted for their beliefs by the Sunni Muslim rulers of the area. The establishment of the French Mandate of Syria marked a turning point in Alawi history. It gave the French the power to recruit Syrian civilians into their armed forces for an indefinite period and created exclusive areas for minorities, including an Alawite state. The Alawite state was later dismantled, but the Alawites continued to be a significant part of the Syrian army. Since Hafez al-Assad took power in 1970, the government has been dominated by a political elite led by the secular al-Assad family. During the Islamic uprising in Syria during the 1970s and 1980s, the establishment came under pressure, and the conflict continues as part of the Syrian civil war. Etymology: the Alawites take their name from Ali ibn Abi Talib, cousin, son-in-law and first male follower of Muhammad, who is considered by Shia Muslims the first Shia Imam and the fourth Rashidun by Sunni Muslims. French occupying forces used the term Alawites, a transliteration into French. In older sources, Alawis are often called Ansaris. According to Samuel Lyde, who lived among the Alawites during the mid-19th century, this was a term they used among themselves. Other sources indicate that Ansari is simply a Western error in the transliteration of Nusayri. However, the term Nusayri had fallen out of currency by the 1920s, as a movement led by intellectuals within the community during the French Mandate sought to replace it with the modern term Alawi. They characterized the older name as an invention of the sect's enemies, ostensibly favoring an emphasis on connection with mainstream Islam, particularly the Shia branch. As such, Nusayri is now generally regarded as antiquated, and has even come to have insulting and abusive connotations. The term is frequently employed as hate speech by Sunni fundamentalists fighting against Bashar al-Assad's government in the Syrian civil war, who use its emphasis on Ibn Nusayr in order to insinuate that Alawi beliefs are man-made, and not divinely inspired. The Alawites are distinct from the Alawi religious sect in Turkey, although the terms share a common etymology and pronunciation. History, origins. The origin of the Alawites is disputed. Local folklore suggests that they are descendants of the followers of the 11th Imam, Hasan al-Askari, and his pupil, Ibn Nusayr. The Alawi religious sect seems to have been organized by a follower of Muhammad ibn Nusayr known as al-Qurta I, who died in Aleppo about 969 AD. In 1032 al-Qurta I's grandson and pupil, al-Tabarani, moved to Latakia. Al-Tabarani influenced the Alawite faith through his writings and by converting the rural population of the Syrian coastal mountain range. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, some Western scholars believed that Alawites were descended from ancient Middle Eastern peoples such as the Canaanites and the Hittites. Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire oppressed the Alawites, attempting to convert them to Sunni Islam. The Alawis rose up against the Ottomans on several occasions, and maintained their autonomy in their mountains. In his book, Seven Pillars of Wisdom, T. E. Lawrence wrote, "The sect, vital in itself, was clannish in feeling and politics. One Nusayri would not betray another, and would hardly not betray an unbeliever. Their villages lay in patches down the main hills to the Tripoli Gap. They spoke Arabic, but had lived there since the beginning of Greek letters in Syria. Usually they stood aside from affairs, and left the Turkish government alone in hope of reciprocity. During the 18th century, the Ottomans employed a number of Alawite leaders as tax collectors under the iltizam system. Some Alawites supported Ottoman involvement in the Egyptian-Ottoman Wars of 1831–1833 and 1839–1841, and had careers in the Ottoman army or as Ottoman governors. Early in the 20th century the mainly Sunni Ottoman leaders were wealthy and politically powerful, and the Alawites were poor peasants. Alawites were not allowed to testify in court until after World War I and the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire. French Mandate period. After the end of World War I and the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Syria and Lebanon were placed by the League of Nations under the French Mandate for Syria and the Lebanon. On December 15, 1918 Alawite leader Salih al-Ali called for a meeting of Alawite leaders in the town of Sheikh Badr, urging them to revolt and expel the French from Syria. When French authorities heard about the meeting, they sent a force to arrest Salih al-Ali. He and his men ambushed and defeated the French forces at Sheikh Badr, inflicting more than 35 casualties. After this victory al-Ali began organizing his Alawite rebels into a disciplined force, with its own general command and military ranks. The Sheikh Badr skirmish began the Syrian revolt of 1919. Al-Ali responded to French attacks by laying siege to Al-Qajmas, from which the French had conducted their military operations against him. In November, General Henri Gouraud mounted a campaign against Salih al-Ali's forces in the Nusayri Mountains. His forces entered al-Ali's village of al-Sheikh Badr, arresting many Alawi leaders. However, al-Ali fled to the north. When a large French force overran his positions, he went underground. Alawite state. When the French began to occupy Syria in 1920, an Alawite state was created in the coastal and mountain country comprising most Alawite villages. The French justified this by citing differences between the backwards mountain people and the mainstream Sunnis. The division also intended to protect the Alawite people from more powerful majorities, such as the Sunnis. The French also created microstates, such as Greater Lebanon for the Maronite Christians and Jabal al-Druze for the Druze. Aleppo and Damascus were also separate states. Under the mandate many Alawite chieftains supported a separate Alawite nation, and tried to convert their autonomy into independence. The French encouraged Alawites to join their military forces, in part to provide a counterweight to the Sunni majority. According to a 1935 letter by the French Minister of War, the French considered the Alawites and the Druze the only warlike races in the Mandate territories. The region was home to a mostly rural, heterogeneous population. The land-owning families and 80% of the population of the port city of Latakia were Sunni Muslim. However, in rural areas 62% of the population were Alawite peasants. There was considerable Alawite separatist sentiment in the region, evidenced by a 1936 letter signed by 80 Alawi leaders addressed to the French Prime Minister which said that the Alawite people rejected attachment to Syria and wished to stay under French protection. Among the signatories was Sulayman Ali al-Assad, father of Hafez al-Assad. In May 1930, the Alawite state was renamed the Government of Latakia in one of the few concessions by the French to Arab nationalists before 1936. Nevertheless, on December 3, 1936 the Alawite state was reincorporated into Syria as a concession by the French to the nationalist bloc. The law went into effect in 1937. In 1939, the Sanjak of Alexandria contained a large number of Alawites. The Hotain land was given to Turkey by the French after a League of Nations plebiscite in the province. This development greatly angered most Syrians. To add to Alawi contempt, in 1938 the Turkish military went into a degree Skenderan and expelled most of the Arab and Armenian population. Before this, the Alawite Arabs and Armenians comprised most of the province's population. Zaki al-Asuzi, a young Alawite leader from Iskenderun province in the Sanjak of Alexandria who led the resistance to the province's annexation by the Turks, later became a co-founder of the Ba'ath Party with Eastern Orthodox Christian schoolteacher Michel Aflaq and Sunni politician Salah ad-Din al-Bitar. After World War II, Sulayman al-Murshid played a major role in uniting the Alawite province with Syria. He was executed by the Syrian government in Damascus on December 12, 1946, only 3 days after a political trial. After Syrian independence, Syria became independent on April 17, 1946. In 1949, after the 1948 Arabi-Euro-Israeli War, Syria experienced a number of military coups and the rise of the Ba'ath Party. In 1958, Syria and Egypt were united by a political agreement into the United Arab Republic. The UAR lasted for 3 years, breaking apart in 1961 when a group of army officers seized power and declared Syria independent. A succession of coups ensued until, in 1963, a secretive military committee helped the Ba'ath Party seize power. In 1966 Alawite-affiliated military officers successfully rebelled and expelled the Boer unregistered trademark F Party Old Guard followers of Greek Orthodox Christian Michel Aflaq and Sunni Muslim Salah ad-Din al-Bitar, calling Zaki al-Asusi the Socrates of the reconstituted Ba'ath Party. In 1970 Air Force General Hafez al-Assad, an Alawite, took power and instigated a correctionist movement in the Ba'ath Party. The coup of 1970 ended the political instability which had existed since independence. Robert D. Kaplan compared Hafez al-Assad's coming to power to an untouchable becoming Maharaja in India or a Jew becoming Tsar in Russia. An unprecedented development shocking to the Sunni majority population which had monopolized power for so many centuries. In 1971 al-Assad declared himself president of Syria, a position the constitution at the time permitted only for Sunni Muslims. In 1973 a new constitution was adopted, replacing Islam as the state religion with a mandate that the president's religion be Islam, and protests erupted. In 1974, to satisfy this constitutional requirement, Musa as Sadr issued a fatwa that Alawites were a community of 12 Shiite Muslims. Under the authoritarian, secular Assad government, religious minorities were tolerated more than before but political dissidents were not. In 1982, when the Muslim Brotherhood mounted an anti-government Islamist insurgency, Hafez Assad staged a military offensive against them known as the Hama massacre. Beliefs, theology and practices. Alawites consider themselves to be Muslims, although some Sunnis dispute that they are. Alawite doctrine incorporates Gnostic, Neoplatonic, Islamic, Christian and other elements and has, therefore, been described as syncretistic. Their theology is based on a divine triad, or trinity, which is the core of Alawite belief. The triad comprises 3 emanations of the one God, the supreme aspect or entity called the essence, or the meaning, together with 2 lesser emanations known as his name, or veil, and his gate. These emanations have manifested themselves in different human forms over several cycles in history, the last cycle of which was as Ali, Muhammad and Salman the Persian. Alawite belief is summarized in the formula, I turn to the gate. I bow before the name. I adore the meaning. Alawites also hold that they were originally stars or divine lights that were cast out of heaven through disobedience and must undergo repeated reincarnation before returning to heaven. They can be reincarnated as Christians or others through sin and as animals if they become infidels. Alawite beliefs have never been confirmed by their modern religious authorities. Alawites tend to conceal their beliefs due to historical persecution. Some tenets of the faith are secret, known only to a select few. Therefore, they have been described as a mystical sect. Alawites do only celebrate Islamic festivals, their most important feast is Eid al-Ghadir. Opinions on position within Islam. Alawites have always described themselves as being 12 Shiite Muslims and have been recognized as such by the prominent Lebanese Shiite cleric Musa al-Sadr. The Sunni Grand Mufti of Jerusalem Haj Amin al-Husseini issued a fatwa recognizing them as part of the Muslim community in the interest of Arab nationalism. However, Athari Sunni scholars such as Ibn Kathir have categorized Alawites as pagans in their writings. Barry Rubin has suggested that Syrian leader Hafez al-Assad and his son and successor Bashar al-Assad pressed their fellow Alawites to behave like regular Muslims, shedding their distinctive aspects. During the early 1970s a booklet, al-Anṣāriyyah al-Bayt was published, which was signed by numerous Alawi men of religion, described the doctrines of the Imami Shia as Alawite. Additionally, there has been a recent movement to unite Alawism and the other branches of 12er Islam through educational exchange programs in Syria and Com. Some sources have discussed the sunnification of Alawites under the al-Assad regime. Joshua Landis, director of the Center for Middle East Studies, writes that Hafez al-Assad tried to turn Alawites into good Muslims in exchange for preserving a modicum of secularism and tolerance in society. On the other hand, al-Assad declared the Alawites to be nothing but 12er Shiites. In a paper, Islamic Education in Syria, Landis wrote that no mention is made in Syrian textbooks of Alawites, Druze, Ismailis or Shia Islam. Islam was presented as a monolithic religion. Ali Suleiman al-Ahmad, chief judge of the Ba'athist Syrian state, has said, Population. Syria, Alawites have traditionally lived in the Nusayri mountains along the Mediterranean coast of Syria. Latakia and Tartus are the region's principal cities. They are also concentrated in the plains around Hama and Homs. Alawites also live in Syria's major cities, and are estimated at about 12% of the country's population. There are 4 Alawite confederations Kalbiya, Kayatin, Hardadin, and Matoira each divided into tribes. Alawites are concentrated in the Latakia region of Syria, extending north to Antioch, Turkey, and in and around Homs and Hama. Before 1953 Alawites held specifically reserved seats in the Syrian parliament, in common with all other religious communities. After that there were only general Muslim and Christian categories, without mention of subgroups, to reduce sectarianism. Turkey. To avoid confusion with the Alawis, the Alawites call themselves Arab Alawiyya in Turkish. The term Nusayr, previously used in theological texts, has been revived in recent studies. In al-Qur'an, Alawites are known as Fella and Arabuiyya plus or minus by the Sunni population. A quasi-official name used during the 1930s by Turkish authorities was Eti-1 Kleri, to conceal their Arabic origins. Although this term is obsolete, it is still used by some older people as a euphemism. The exact number of Alawites in Turkey is unknown. There were 185,000 in 1970, suggesting about 400,000 in 2009. As Muslims, they are not recorded separately from Sunnis. In the 1965 census, 180,000 people in the 3 provinces declared their mother tongue as Arabic. However, Arabic-speaking Sunnis and Christians were also included in this figure. Turkish Alawites traditionally speak the same dialect of Levantine Arabic as Syrian Alawites. Arabic is preserved in rural communities and in some in Daraa. Younger people in the cities of al-Qur'an and a degree Skenderun tend to speak Turkish. The Turkish spoken by Alawites is distinguished by its accents and vocabulary. Knowledge of the Arabic alphabet is confined to religious leaders and men who have worked or studied in Arab countries. Alawites demonstrate considerable social mobility. Until the 1960s, they were bound to Sunni areas around Antakya and were poor. Alawites are prominent in the sectors of transportation and commerce, and a large, professional middle class has emerged. Male exogamy has increased, particularly by those who attend universities or live in other parts of Turkey. These marriages are tolerated. However, female exogamy is discouraged. Alawites, like Alawis, have strong leftist political beliefs. However, some people in rural areas may support secular, conservative parties such as the Democratic Party. Most Alawites feel oppressed by the policies of the Presidency of Religious Affairs in Turkey. Lebanon. There are an estimated 100,000 to 120,000 Alawites in Lebanon, where they have lived since at least the 16th century. They are one of the 18 official Lebanese sects. Due to the efforts of their leader, Alawiyah, the TAIF agreement of 1989 gave them 2 reserved seats in parliament. Lebanese Alawites live primarily in the Jabal Muzan neighborhood of Tripoli and in 15 villages in the Akka district, and are represented by the Arab Democratic Party. Their mufti is Sheikh Asad Assi. The Bab al-Tabenha-Jabal Muzan conflict between pro-Syrian Alawites and anti-Syrian Sunnis has affected Tripoli for decades. There are also about 2,000 Alawites living in the village of Ghajar, which is split between Lebanon and the Golan Heights. In 1932 the residents of Ghajar were given the option of choosing their nationality, and overwhelmingly chose to be a part of Syria. Before the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, the residents of Ghajar were counted in the 1960 Syrian census. When Israel captured the Golan Heights from Syria in 1967, Ghajar was a no-man's land for 2.5 months. References